Good afternoon. Thank you for being here today. I am joined today by our local leadership team who represent more than 6,000 CBP employees here in San Diego. Director of Field Operations, Sydney Akey, and Port Director, Maritza Marin, Chief Patrol Agent, Patricia McGurk Daniel, and Director of Air and Marine Operations, Brandon Tucker. Thank you for joining me today. We're here today at the San Ysidro Port of Entry where we are seeing more than 40% of the fentanyl coming into our country. 1 year ago, I stood right here with 18 of our law enforcement and local partners to announce our updated CBP strategy to combat synthetic opioids like fentanyl. On that day, we took a decisive step forward in our fight against fentanyl with an aggressive strategy aimed at addressing this poison through stronger partnerships. We immediately launched a brand new multi-jurisdictional Operation Apollo to put the strategy into action. Today, I'm here to provide updates on that and more. Over the past year, we have faced some serious challenges. We have risen to each of them. During fiscal year 2024, which ended on September 30th, we saw historic migration numbers early in the year. We drastically increased our enforcement efforts and saw a significant decrease in encounters. We recognized the threats posed by the vicious, unrelenting, transnational criminal organizations profiting from the exploitation of vulnerable people. We took unprecedented measures to dismantle and disrupt these operations and organizations. And we saw the continued fentanyl crisis firsthand, with narcotics often smuggled through ports of entry, destroying lives and killing our loved ones. We surged our enforcement and took new steps to disrupt the fentanyl supply chain. Across all of our mission sets, alongside our partners, we have evolved our tactics and our capabilities. We've enhanced our enforcement efforts across multiple fronts, and we put our mission first to protecting the American people. Because the 65,000 men and women of CBP, our officers, our agents, our specialists, and our professional staff are working every day to keep our community safe. And their efforts are having an impact. And here's how. On the migration front, we saw unprecedented numbers of individuals attempting to enter the U.S. early last year. We surged personnel and resources to impacted sectors, including here in San Diego. We leveraged cutting-edge technologies to help our agents respond quickly and effectively. We worked closely with our partners in Mexico to step up enforcement. We enhanced cooperation with our regional partners from the government and private sector. We worked to disrupt the networks and pseudo-legitimate travel agencies preying on vulnerable migrants and driving them to our border with no regard for their well-being. We managed this challenge with integrity and professionalism. We always do. And while maintaining access to lawful pathways, we enhanced consequences for those who crossed the border unlawfully. Since the presidential proclamation and securing the border rule were issued in June, we have significantly increased the consequences for those who illegally cross into the United States. This has led to a continued meaningful decrease in unlawful border crossings. Overall, we've seen a 55% decrease in migrant encounters along the southwest border since June. We are putting more people into expedited removal than ever before, which means strengthened consequences and less strain to cities around the country. In fact, we've decreased releases by more than 80%. These efforts have allowed us to get our folks on the front lines with more agents along the border between the ports of entry. This has allowed us to focus on our critical law enforcement mission. As a result, we've seen Border Patrol gotaways decrease by 60%. All of that work has enabled us to further increase our focus on disrupting and dismantling transnational criminal organizations. Our borders should be the last line of defense, not the first. That's why we also collaborate with foreign governments to share intelligence, improve border security infrastructure, and build their capacity to intercept irregular migrants before they reach our borders. For example, this past year, we worked closely with countries in Central and South America to intercept thousands of individuals before they could continue their journey north. Just last week, I was in El Salvador to sign new agreements aimed at increasing information sharing while also facilitating enhanced lawful trade. We have also worked closely with the Department of State in their efforts to further restrict the issue of visas to include travel company executives who facilitate irregular migration of vulnerable migrants. These same TCOs are also responsible for bringing dangerous drugs like fentanyl into our country, killing Americans every single day. CBP is on the front line of the fight against fentanyl. We're best positioned to take on this challenge. We use analytics, operations, non-intrusive inspection technology, and more to achieve results. In the last 2 fiscal years, CBP has seized more than 50,000 pounds of fentanyl. That's more than enough to produce more than 2 billion lethal doses of fentanyl. Our fight goes far beyond finished products. We are seizing precursor chemicals, pill presses, parts, dyes, and molds used to produce fentanyl. We are cutting off cartel resources like cash and guns going south. Through Operation Apollo, together with our partners, we seized approximately 19,300 pounds of fentanyl, 128,000 pounds of methamphetamine, 25,000 pounds of cocaine, 848 pounds of heroin, and 2,278 weapons and parts. Not to mention over $7.5 million in illicit funds. More than half of those seizures happened right here in California, thanks to the work of the personnel of the San Diego and Los Angeles field offices and the Border Patrol's San Diego and El Centro sectors. We're also raising awareness about the dangers of fentanyl. We have joined more than 175 partner agencies across 40 states and other federal agencies as a part of Operation Free, led by the state of Virginia. But the most important statistic is that opioid-related overdoses decreased last year. This is an important development, but our efforts continue. One death is too many. We are also enhancing our enforcement efforts in the trade environment. In fiscal year 2024, CBP processed over 1.4 billion de minimis shipments. These are small packages, nearly 4 million of which come into our country every single day. This explosive growth has been exploited by bad actors who are sending the chemicals and equipment used to produce fentanyl in small packages, as well as unsafe counterfeit goods. The sheer volume of packages makes it hard to detect the drugs and illegal goods being sent. In response, we have increased inspections. We're targeting high-risk imports. We're holding shippers, carriers, brokers accountable for what's in the packages. And we're strengthening our partnerships with industry to ensure compliance. We've also expanded our use of advanced analytics to identify suspicious shipments before they arrive. This allows us to more effectively target and interdict illegal goods. This helps protect American consumers. It ensures harmful products don't enter our supply chain. All of this matters because what happens at the border impacts communities across the nation. Our enhanced enforcement efforts are making California's communities safer. The agents and officers who do this work, this difficult work, often thankless work, need more resources to do their job. First and foremost, we need to increase the size of our workforce to match the increase in trade, travel, and migration. We also need to modernize our trade laws, which predate the massive growth in e-commerce and air cargo, which accounts for much of modern day commerce. We also need help from you, members of the public. Know the dangers of drugs like fentanyl and spread the word. One pill can kill. Law enforcement organizations out there, partner with us. Join us in the fight. Our commitment to the safety and security of the American people is unwavering. Every gram of fentanyl we intercept represents a potential life saved, and every trafficker we stop represents another blow to the networks profiting from this epidemic. As we mark this one-year milestone, I want to extend my deepest gratitude to the men and women of CBP who work tirelessly every day in and day out to protect our nation. Their dedication, professionalism, and bravery are the driving force behind our success. In conclusion, we are looking to the future. We are dedicated, we are motivated, we are relentless, and we will continue to advocate for more tools and resources to stay one step ahead in this dynamic threat environment. We will not fail. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Marina Zavala from Telemundo. We can notice the increase of security around this border, but last month we saw a whole family that crossed the border, even kids and an older woman that was gunpoint by CBP agents in the area. My question is, why this increase in such a scale in the protocols when the people cross the border?
I am not aware of that particular event, but our officers and agents, they treat every scenario the exact same way. So if there is a potential security risk, they're going to handle that security risk appropriately.
Just to understand if it's normal, the people that cross the border face this kind of situation, even if they have kids of 9 years old or elder women.
So parents, again, I'm not talking specifically about this incident, but people can be wanted that are parents as well.
Thank you. Just a two-part question, if I may, about Mexico, the government of Mexico. You pointed out, I think, that Border Patrol apprehensions are down very sharply, but they're up sharply in Mexico. And the phenomenon, I think you may have addressed it before, where people are coming up to the border, getting arrested, getting sent back south, coming back up in kind of this circular motion and kind of creating a bottleneck in Mexico. I'm wondering if you could address that. What is Mexico doing within its borders? And if that's what's happening, how concerned are you about the growing numbers? And the second point about the expansion of CBP-1 applications throughout Mexico. Anecdotally, we've heard that there's been more attacks, people have been targeted for kidnapping as they're coming up to the northern border, even though Mexico is helping with some bus rides. But have you heard about that? Is that on your radar? Thank you.
I'll start with, remind me about the first question and the second.
The first question about the bottleneck in Mexico.
Oh, yeah, the circular.
How concerned you are about that?
So we have very close relationships with Mexico, as you know, both locally and at the national level. So we're in continued conversations with our partners. In fact, one of the chief's deputies was just in Mexico talking to our partners yesterday about their enforcement efforts and what we can do jointly together. We continue to be concerned about any bottlenecks. We continue to look at those. We continue to address them with our partners. But I think most importantly, it's not just Mexico. That's why I go to places like El Salvador, Guatemala, Panama, Colombia, working with our foreign partners. That's why we're working with the Department of State on visa restrictions for those folks that are illegally migrating to the southwest border. So there's a whole host of things that we do, both with Mexico, but in the region to address those issues. And Mexico has been repatriating folks themselves as well. Something we keep a close eye on, and as we see different trends, we'll address them appropriately. I have not heard any anecdotal information about the CBP-1 kidnapping. Obviously, we continue to encourage lawful pathways to keep the vulnerable people out of the hands of the smugglers. Good to see you, Sal.
Last year, you mentioned 47% of the fentanyl seized along the southern border happens in San Diego. You just stated it's a little more than 50%. Why is San Diego the preferred plaza or route for smugglers to bring in their stuff through along into the U.S.? And what are you doing specifically to bring that number down?
So a couple points. So I was talking specifically to Operation Apollo. So actually over 50% of the fentanyl right now is coming in through Arizona, the Nogales area, about 40% through San Diego. You know, thank you for asking the question. I was just talking to the sheriffs from California before I came to this press conference. So it's really, number one, it was about bringing our folks together, Customs and Border Protection, the new strategy, getting out on the roads with our state and local partners, shutting off the egress and ingress routes, using funds like Stone Garden to ensure that we're funding the state and locals so they can participate in our operations. It's about getting the tools and the technology to the Office of Field Operations so they can continue to seize more fentanyl. It's about synthesizing the information and getting it to the frontline officers so they can action it. And it's also about things like Plaza Spike, where we're identifying the people that control the southwest border on the southwest side, the plazas, the plaza bosses, the logistics networks, and going after those logistics networks from California all the way to Texas. It's about working with the government of Mexico to bring those folks to justice. It's about analytics, data. We've created a fentanyl coordination cell in Washington, D.C. at our National Targeting Center that are coordinating with these folks every single day. We have a Southwest Border Intelligence Cell in Tucson that brings all of our federal partners together, but also our foreign partners together. So it's a all-of-government approach, but we're on the front lines, and we're leading this fight, and we will continue to do so.
We see many booths empty. You have double booths, extra booths, but are empty. Do you have a plan to operate that booth without losing the security? To have a faster border, but not losing?
Look, we have a dual purpose, right? It's enforcement, but it's facilitating lawful trade and travel. So I've been very clear over the past several years about the need for additional officers at our ports of entry, specifically along the southwest border, so we can fight things like fentanyl. We can keep opioids, methamphetamine off the streets. So my call is on to Congress to fund so that we can do both. We can facilitate lawful trade and travel, and we can go after the transnational criminal organizations that are smuggling fentanyl across our borders.
Thank you for coming here today.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering, how exactly is CBP enacting President Biden's recent asylum crackdown? Are they deporting asylum seekers? How do agents respond to them?
So we are, first of all, we are putting more individuals into expedited removal, which is enhanced consequences than ever before, 80%. We're removing more individuals. So last year we've removed more individuals than we have since 2010. So we continue to work with ERO for detention and removal. We continue to work with Citizenship and Immigration Services to do those claims, and we're quickly removing folks that don't qualify for asylum and taking them back to their country of origin.
Hello. So on the Mexican side, we often receive press releases regarding what they call blind mule cases. This is people that find drugs inside their cars, but they have no idea that they're inside. I just want to know, I know this has been the case for many, many years, but have you noticed any increase on these kind of cases? Should the community be aware of something regarding this?
I have not seen any increase. Certainly, as you elaborate, that has been ongoing for a number of years. And you know, the team here, the Office of Field Operations, continues to work with our investigative partners and the prosecutors and the like to identify those that are responsible, those transnational criminal organizations that are responsible for doing just that. And we have brought some of those folks to justice.
Just a quick question. My colleague mentioned an incident that you say you weren't aware of. A video was posted of a family being held at gunpoint in an inspection here. And recently we saw a sign in the Century Lanes, big new sign about not recording with cell phones when you're heading through these lanes. I was going to ask if they're related, but it doesn't sound like you'll be able to answer that. Is it new? Is it part of this new enforcement? And if so, I mean, could phones be confiscated if anyone's seen recording?
That is not new. That's a policy we've had for quite some time.
Hello, can we get a quick update on Ped West? Right, it was part of a $700 million expansion to this port of entry, closed during the pandemic, partial reopening now, but 4 years later, impacts people on a daily basis crossing back and forth. I spoke to the local chamber of commerce and said it's having an impact on the economy, not just with people doing less shopping, but people not getting to work on time and longer wait times at Eddie's. So when or should we expect it to reopen fully?
I think I addressed that question before. We continue to ask for additional resources for San Ysidro specifically along the southwest border in general. Thank you.